So, let's just get started then. So what I'm going to talk about are basically bridges and layer 2 protocols. And for the past 12 years, we've all really been working on bridge engineering. So raise your hand if you've ever deposited coins in the Coinbase, Bitstamp, Binance. Don't worry, I'm not the SEC, I'm not going to report you. Oh, great, there's some people over there. Basically, most people here hopefully will have already used a bridge. And the idea is fairly straightforward. We have Ethereum, and you can imagine there's this bridge contract on Ethereum that holds all the funds on behalf of someone like Coinbase. And Coinbase is a single authority, the one ring to rule them all, that controls, the funds in that smart contract. And we can imagine the smart contract has some functionality: deposit, withdrawal, and even some form of allowance. Now let's say Alice has funds on Coinbase, and she wants to withdraw her funds. She'll ping Coinbase to say, Coinbase, please let me withdraw 1,000 ETH. And assuming she doesn't get locked out and deal with Coinbase support, hopefully they will actually give her coins. So they'll issue a transaction, they'll sign it, and they'll give this to the bridge contract. Now the bridge contract will look at the transaction and say, well, I trust Coinbase. I'm holding the funds on behalf of Coinbase. They told me to give 1,000 ETH to Alice, so I must assume the database is okay, and I'm going to give the funds to Alice. So obviously Alice comes along, and then she gets her 1,000 ETH. So lucky Alice, she's now a whale. But generically, what's happening here under the hood? Why is this important? Generically speaking, there is this off-chain database that has the account balances, the program state, and it's basically, at the moment for Coinbase, is private and custodial to Coinbase. And then we have the bridge contract. The bridge contract holds all the assets. It could have $1 billion, $2 billion. It holds all the assets on behalf of this database. And so if you think of it like a business, you have your assets and you have your liabilities. And the database really describes your liabilities and who's entitled to these funds. And there's this trust assumption for the bridge. The bridge needs to have some confidence that the database, this off-chain database, is correct and valid before it's willing to process a withdrawal. But this trust assumption has evolved over the years. I've just mentioned the prime example, the single authority, one ring to rule them all. Now, over the years, we've had this, multi-authority approach. If 5 people out of 9 say, this database is okay, then we can process the withdrawal. We distribute out the trust. And then we also get these crypto-economic bridges. One good example is Polygon, and really what's happening there is we don't know who should be trusted to protect the bridge. So as long as you stake some assets, you can stake, self-appoint yourself, and then you become a validator whose job is to protect the database. Now, in all 3 cases, we have to trust a set of parties to protect our funds. Remember, guys, this is crypto. We're supposed to disintermediate people, and yet we have these trusted intermediaries that hold over 10% of all crypto assets within their private databases. And it does suck, but not suck because of this the theoretical problem. It just sucks practically. Over the years since 2011, 2014, one example is Mt. Gox. They lost 6% of all Bitcoin, and somehow we've just put it under the rug and just pretend it didn't really happen. They just keep getting hacked. And it's not because they're malicious. Well, I guess Mt. Gox was sort of malicious at some points, but generally speaking, it's just not even that they're incompetent, it's just so difficult to secure billions of dollars. And Taylor has this wonderful spreadsheet where I got the data from, with all the historical hacks for these exchanges and smart contracts. But that would have been multi-authority bridges. We should be getting better. And, there's less of them that exist, but of course, they still get hacked. Was anyone here impacted by the Ronin bridge hack? I guess no one's raised their hand. I don't know if anyone plays that game. A lot of us were surprised it even had $500 million, but there you go. This whole user set out there. But the problem is, one, they only discovered the hack 6 days after it happened, and they lost $500 million. And from the sounds of it, speculating, there's 5 out of 9 validators. Apparently 4 validators belong to one company, and when you hack that company, you could tell the 5th validator to do whatever you want. So it was really single authority, but it came across as a multi-authority bridge. And then the crypto-economic hacks, well, not many of them really exist. I took this example from Calvin, who was up earlier, about beanstalk farms. It's not really a bridge either, but they managed to exploit a flash loan to take over the governance contract and to steal $75 million of ETH. But generally speaking, my point is, we've sort of forgot about this old school motto. Not your keys, not your coins. I'm sure everyone in here has said that to yourself once in the past, not your keys, not your coins. And so really we should be building systems where I can maintain self-custody of my funds, and it requires my digital signature to authorize any transactions. So can we build an off-chain system while still allowing the user to maintain self-custody of their funds? And this is not a new idea. This was sort of at the heart of this paper in 2014, for Bitcoin, the old sidechain paper. We always use the word sidechain to mean there's no trust, but actually in the paper they were trying to build a trustless bridge. They don't use the word bridge, but that's what they were trying to achieve. And if you were going to categorize it today, you would call it the consensus bridge. The idea was that I could lock up Bitcoin, it would get unlocked on an experimental blockchain, you would transact there, and then eventually you could get the funds back. And the bridge contract would rely on the judgment of the external consensus protocol. If the consensus protocol says that Alice can withdraw 1,000 ETH, then the bridge contract was again quite happy to facilitate that. But the question is that a trustless bridge? And no, it's still not trustless, because we're still trusting a set of authorities, which is the external consensus protocol. We have to trust and follow their judgment. The bridge contract cannot independently verify that the database is correct. It just has to outsource that to someone else. And what's the problem here? The first problem was if the consensus protocol breaks down, all the operators go offline, they go buy Lambos and they disappear for a while. Then your funds just get stuck, because you physically can't issue a withdrawal transaction that would then return your funds on the layer 1. The other issue was that if the consensus protocol processed an invalid transaction, then that could, of course, be processed by the bridge, and then they would steal all the funds from the system. So this approach helped the bridge contract read the database, but not check that the database was correct. So can we really build a bridge that protects us from an all-powerful authority? That's sort of the end goal here. And that's what I would call the validating bridge, which are the roll-ups that everyone's been talking about, I guess, all week. And the idea is that the bridge contract must receive indisputable evidence that the database's integrity is intact. So the bridge contract is responsible for independently verifying every single update to the database. And that is exactly what the teams are trying to build. The Starkware, ZK Sync, Arbitrum, Optimism. They're all trying to build a validating bridge. So the bridge contract has custody of the funds, and the operators just provide a service, but they can never tamper with the database itself. Again, the bridge can independently verify that everything is correct. So this sounds like a really cool idea, but how does it work? How do we build a validating bridge? So I'm going to deep dive a little bit into the agents, who are the players, an overview of a validating bridge, at a high level, how will it work, the threat model, and finally, what does it mean to actually be secure? The agents are very straightforward. We have Alice, the honest user. She likes mooncats. She wants to transfer her mooncat on the roll-up. Very innocent. We have the sequencer. Their job is to take the pending transactions on the system, order them, and get them ready for execution. And then we have the executor, and their job is to take the order transactions, execute them, and convince the bridge contract that indeed this is a valid update to the database. At a high level, and of course implementations will differ, but this is a good abstract model of our mental model on how to think how this works. So we have Alice and the sequencer. and Alice wants to transact on the rollup, or this off-chain system. Alice will deposit funds into the bridge contract, and this will get reflected on the database. And then Bob comes along, hi Bob, and Alice wants to transact and send some money to Bob. So she'll sign a transaction, and she'll give it to the sequencer. Now the sequencer will get this transaction, and they can notify Bob to say, Bob, you're going to receive 1 coin. But he hasn't yet received it. It's pending, it's not confirmed, and it's not finalized. Then we wait around. The sequencer is waiting to collect more off-chain transactions. And eventually, the sequencer will take their off-chain transactions and post it to the bridge contract. The bridge will then be aware there is a list of transactions that will eventually be executed, and they'll be executed in this order. So now they're in the smart contract, and everyone can see what's going to happen next. So we wait around, and again, they're not really confirmed or executed yet, they're just ordered. And then the executor comes, and their job is to take the pending transactions, execute them, and I've got this 1990 animation for it. They execute the transactions, and then they post a little checkpoint alongside this indisputable evidence that this update is indeed correct. And this is all the rollups are doing. Continuously, we order transactions, we execute transactions, we order transactions, we execute transactions. And the bridge contract is validating that every update to this database is correct. And of course, everything's public, so anyone, including Alice, can download the database, and she can check if she actually owns a Mooncat on the system. Now, what about this adversarial threat model? Who is the adversary we're trying to protect against? One way to think about it is One way to think about it is the message flow control. On the layer 2 system, the adversary can view, reorder, or drop all messages. The only guarantee is that Alice can send a transaction to the bridge contract. That's the only message delivery we get in this guarantee. The second one is that the adversary can corrupt nearly every single party. They can corrupt all sequencers. They can corrupt nearly every single executor. The only people we can trust is the honest user who wants, to get their money out of the system, and the bridge contract itself. Now, this is the all-powerful adversary, and you really can't have a stronger adversary than this. And as we saw during L2 Beats with the risk framework, and even just their website, not every rollup can fully constrain this beast yet. Once you can defeat the beast, then you have a secure layer 2 system. So what about the security properties? What's the security goals? What does it mean to be secure? The ultimate goal is that there is this off-chain database, and we want to protect the safety and the liveness of this database. And there's really 3 questions that the bridge needs answered. So the bridge needs a guarantee. Is the data publicly available? Can anyone get a copy of the database? That's the data availability problem. The second one is the state transition integrity problem. Is the bridge convinced that every update to this database is correct? And the third one is censorship resistance. Can the bridge contract be convinced that anyone, including Alice and her Mooncats, can transact on this system, and their transaction is eventually executed? So nobody can be censored. There are the 3 security goals that we want to achieve. Now, just to deep dive into them a little bit, the data availability problem, as I mentioned, is very straightforward. We need a guarantee that the data for the database is publicly available, so anyone can have a copy of that. And there's several reasons why we would want this. One is audibility. Maybe Alice wants to recompute every transaction herself and be convinced that the database is indeed correct. The second is interaction. Maybe Alice wants to check her balance on the rollup before sending out some funds. And the third is withdrawal. She may need to prove to the bridge contract what is her balance before she can withdraw her funds. Now, solutions to this is bingo, that's where we get the rollup from. The way we guarantee this today is that we take the data and we just publish it directly to Ethereum. And Ethereum guarantees this is publicly available. Historically, Plasma was the challenge, like a challenge response protocol, but it was so impractical that it sort of derailed everyone for 2 years. Today we push to Ethereum. Later on, like the Voladiums, the idea that you can give it to a committee or a dedicated data availability layer. So this is still evolving on how we can guarantee the data is indeed available. What about the state transition integrity problem? This is fairly straightforward. We don't want the executor or the sequencer to post a checkpoint that basically gives them all the funds in the system. If they can just modify the state of the database, then they can steal all the funds, and that's not a great outcome. And bingo, this is where we get the optimistic versus the ZK rollups, or the fault proofs versus the validity proofs. We'll go into this on another day, because this is really the most hotly debated topic for rollups, and it's actually just one small problem out of the wider scheme of things that need to be solved. And the third one is enforcing censorship resistance. So the idea is that Alice pings, Coinbase in this example and says, Coinbase, can I withdraw my funds? But really that's the adversary, and they say, no, your funds are stuck forever, haha, you'll never get your money out. And clearly that's not a great outcome. So how do we solve this? So one thing to highlight is that we have two actors. We have, the sequencer and the executor. What's really important to highlight is that the sequencer has absolutely nothing to do with censorship resistance. The sequencer's only job is to provide a superior user experience, this 1 second finality off-chain. It's really down to the executor and the bridge contract together to guarantee liveness of the database so anyone can transact. And we have to assume at least one executor is honest, and that anyone in this room could be an executor. That's the security assumption there. So just to summarize, there's a data availability problem, the state transition integrity problem, and the censorship resistance. If we can satisfy all properties, then hopefully we can deploy, we can slay the beast and deploy a secure layer 2 system. This is actually a meme from 2014 for the bear wheel, and I just swapped the Bitcoin logo to the Ethereum logo. But yeah, I don't know if anyone's aware of that. But again, if we can solve these problems, do we still need to trust a sequencer? And here I've got yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Because I'm sure if we brainstorm enough, there's other problems that arise that will need to be solved. But these are the 3 core problems before you get, start dealing with the little edge cases in a way. But I do want to finish on one final note, because I feel like this is a very important thing to highlight. So, over the past 12 years, we have clearly built lots of different bridges. But the problem is that when we build a bridge and we set up a new exchange or a new service that tries to custody and protect coins, it's really a human process that is protecting the coins. You keep it in a cold storage in an event, and you have 50,000 access codes to get in. It's a human process that's very difficult to replicate for thousands of online services. And it's a very difficult process for securing billions of dollars. And clearly it doesn't work very well. There's only a few entities, a handful, that can really pull it off in practice. So what's really exciting about the rollups and the layer 2 bridges and the validating bridges is as long as one team can get it right, one team can get a really good implementation that's bug-free, we could take this implementation and reinstantiate it thousands of times. Every service provider could run their own rollup. And why would they do that? Because they no longer have to replicate this human process. They don't have to secure billions of dollars, but they can offer the exact same service for their users. So in my mind, we don't need to convince users to care about custody. They don't care if they're using Coinbase or a layer 2 system. It will be the operators who do. They'll drive the adoption, because now they can offer a service on top of like $10 billion without the risk of keeping that secure or safe. And that's because custody is just an unnecessary liability. So thank you guys for listening. And I don't know if I have time for questions. I got a fin there, so I don't think I do.